Welcome to Elevate Springfield, where we will dive into strategies and stories that help you rise to your full potential. Each episode, we'll talk about how you can take intentional steps to elevate your life and your business while making a meaningful impact on those around you. Along the way, we're going to bring in the change makers from our community that are already elevating. We'll bring the actionable strategies, you bring the discipline and follow through, and together we can elevate Springfield.
All right, let's go, Springfield. Time to 10x your life, your business, all of it. Time to crush those goals. Time to get after it. Let's go. You are listening to the Elevate Springfield podcast. Robert Farrell here, certified 10X coach, speaker, and mentor, here to bring you actionable strategies. You bring the discipline and follow through, and together we're going to elevate Springfield. We're coming to you again from beautiful downtown Springfield in the Big Dog Construction Studio. Hey, we've got so much going on in Springfield right now. Make sure you are participating. Get out there, network with folks, be a part of the community, support local businesses, support local nonprofits, and let's go. We can all grow together. So, hey, another great episode for you today. We're going to get right to our guest after the break. Hey, Springfield, when it comes to reliable, high-quality roofing, you don't want to leave things to chance. That's why you should reach out to Acosta Angeli Roofing, your local roofing expert, serving Springfield and surrounding communities. From quick, dependable repairs to full replacement, from residential to commercial, they are your trusted pros. Call them today at 217-993-2748 or visit their website to book your free quote and inspection. Don't wait. A little leak now could lead to major damage later. Trust the local experts, protect your home, and get peace of mind with Acosta Angeli Roofing. And we are back. Hey, it's a beautiful morning here in downtown Springfield, and joining me is Chad Slayton. We're going to talk about a number of things, one of them being, he's over at Crafted Stag, friend of the show, Grant Hammer. He's been on a couple of times, but Chad, welcome in. Thanks for coming down today.
Robert, thank you for having me this morning.
Absolutely. Excited to learn a little bit more about you. We've talked a number of times, but I can't say we've had a full, long conversation together. So I'm excited to hear about your background and some of the things you're doing here in the community, man. So let's start with a little bit about your background, man. You from around here? Let's go back a little bit.
So born and raised here. My mom and dad, my mom worked for the phone company with Illinois Bell. SBC Ameritech, retired after 38 and a half years with AT&T. My dad was in banking for 45 years with the same bank over here on 5th and Adams. It was First National Bank, First Star Mercantile, and then retired U.S. Bank. And so he's been on numerous boards throughout his entire career, from anywhere from St. John's Hospital to, I remember being a ball boy as a little kid at the LPGA golf tournament in Sherman at the Rail.
Yeah.
That was so cool with Nancy Lopez and Annika Sorenstam and just everybody, Michelle McGann.
That's
so my
cool.
dad being on that board. And so went to Blessed Sacrament grade school, just growing up in the Catholic diocese and going to church. But my family was always Creasters, Christmas Eve, Easter masses, stuff like that.
Sure.
Unless it was like an all-school mass. And then went to SHG, graduated there, tried college for a little bit, just didn't do so hot. Learning disability I've kind of struggled with throughout my life. I tried Springfield College in Illinois. SCI didn't do so hot. So then dad goes, want to try Lincoln Land? Didn't do so hot there either. So then I remember my first job at 16 was a cart boy in a bagger at Schnucks. And I remember I'd come home and I was still living at home with mom and dad at the time. And dad goes, Jesus, Chad, you smell like bologna. So that wasn't a smell I always wanted. So then I remember being out at the mall at White Oaks and Abercrombie. I was in there Christmas shopping with mom and dad, and I got recruited. And there was a guy, Paul, that came up to me. He was going to Robert Morris, hockey player. And he was like, Chad, you should apply here. And so I did. I got the job there in December of 2005. And
certainly doesn't smell like bologna.
I started smelling like fierce cologne in there. Man, all the women definitely love the smell of that aroma. And so I remember even at one point, because my first day on the job, I was talking to Chris earlier on the phone, and my friend Brett, he's a teacher at Trinity Lutheran, and he was the one that kind of helped me on how to learn how to fold the denim wall. There was like 5 or 6 different styles on how to fold the jeans. And I remember it was all about layers at Abercrombie. And My mom wanted to kill me when I lived there at the house. I was wearing 3 t-shirts. They were all muscle fit, it said in the collar.
Right.
I was wearing smalls. So it was wintertime at that time, Christmas time, and I was wearing 3 layers of t-shirts, a button-down flannel maybe, and also a Henley, a button-down like Henley or whatever, and a denim jacket with my ripped Holy Denim jeans and flip-flops. And I just remember Brett saying, "Oh my goodness, Chad, you are wearing a Canadian tuxedo." Didn't know what that was at the time, but now I do. And I just remember telling him the first day on the job there, I said, "I'm going to be up on the marketing one of these days," because I always strive to be a model for Abercrombie and Fitch and Hollister. And he just always laughs. He gives me a hard time still to this day. And so I remember at one point they had offered what was it called? I forget what it was called, but we went to it was an open casting call in De Pere, Missouri, if that's how you pronounce it, at West County Mall.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember going into Abercrombie or Hollister, and I knew I didn't have a shot going into that because there were people from across the country, guys and gals, and man, were they attractive. And so I left. I helped close Abercrombie and Fitch down into January of 2012. And then at that time, I was still living at home with mom and dad, and my dad and mom were still working. And I get a call at the house. Caller ID says Joseph A. Bank. I didn't listen to the voicemail. Dad gets home from work and he goes, "Chad, did you listen to the voicemail?" And I said, "Huh." He goes, "I think they want to offer you a job over there." So it was either Terry Wilson or Todd or Cole Gay. And I listened to it. I called the store, and I had known Todd and Cole, like I was telling you earlier, since I was a little kid. But Terry, I didn't know all that much. And so I went in there, met with him. I might have had coffee at the bean counter when it was still down there next to Pow Bistro. And sure enough, got hired on the job. But with my learning disability, it took me at least a year or close to a year to get it down. I didn't know anything about thread count. I didn't know anything about how to mark a pair of pants on a guy, whether he wanted to break, slight break, no break. Guys younger than me or around my age, they wanted the legs tapered. And I just remember I was a mess. Like I got emotional because Terry was a little hard on me at the time. And so he goes, "Chad, I believe in you. You're going to succeed." And after like a year or so, whatever it was, he goes, "Dude, it snapped. You clicked." And it came in. People would come in. I'd be like, "You're a 38 regular. You're a 40 regular." I'd be like, "If you're a 40 regular, you're typically a 34 waist, aren't you, in a jean?" And they're like, "Yeah, how did you know that?" And I'm like, "You typically go up 2 inches into a dress pant, and that would put you there at a 42 with a 36, a 40 with a 34. It's a 6-inch drop from the chest to the waist." And so I strived at that. One afternoon, one morning, or whatever it was, I got on LinkedIn, and I had messages. A lot of those messages are advertised messages and stuff that you get like in sponsored ads or whatever. But one was from Jake Gigani, Carl and Gwen's oldest son. I worked at Abercrombie with him and his wife, Cynthia. And he reached out to me one day and he goes, "Hey, Chad, how's everything with the family? Everybody doing well? I just wanted to reach out to you. You're very personable, likable. Mom and dad are looking to hire somebody on at the jewelry store." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know anything about jewelry, but I love jewelry." So I met with Carl and Gwen, and it was this would have been right before the pandemic hit. So the latter part of 2019 that I got hired on there. And I was married at the time, living in Chatham. And I had said at one point to my ex-wife, I said, "What if I did go back to school?" She is more the book smart type style, where she got her master's in her early 20s or so, mid 20s. And I just said, "What if I went back to school?" I'm 33 now, not 17, 18 at the time, and just not focusing. And so I said, "We're married. I'm a father figure to your son, and we have a son now too." And she shut me down in the beginning, but she came back to me and she goes, "You really considering going back to school?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "What would you want to do? What do you want to focus on?" And I said, when I graduated high school, I was focusing on at SCI in Lincoln Land Business Administration.
Yeah.
I wanted to follow in dad's footsteps of banking or something around that criteria. And she goes, "Well, have you ever thought of trade school?" I said, "I've never given it much thought. Has it ever crossed my mind?" She goes, "Well, there's welding, there's plumbing," and then she mentions lineman. Bingo. So I'm thinking, and I tell this to a lot of my customers or anything like that in the past, that I was looking at more of the money aspect, how much they make, especially storms. They're being paid triple time,
Oh, yeah.
whatever.
Yeah,
And
good
I
money as
talk,
a lineman.
my goodness. And Carl, I had a little conversation with, because Carl Gigani was a lineman back in the day, and just knowing how dangerous of a gig it is. And so we invested all the money for Lincoln Land. The climbing class is out, the climbing ped at Lincoln Land. They basically recommended the 2-year certification instead of like the 8-week course. There were a lot of guys that were linemen that had been doing the short program. So there was like an 8-week course on the lineman pad, and then there was the coursework, the classwork. And I'm like, oh boy, I'm terrible at test taking and all that stuff. So I remember working there at Gigani though, and working alongside Josh. And you probably know Josh and handling all the Rolexes and Audemars Piguets,
Yeah.
all the high end watches. And man, every single day I'd go in there dressed in a suit and everything, and I'd throw on some Tissot watches if that's how it's pronounced, Rolexes. And I wanted one so badly, and I never got to that point.
Uh-huh.
But then I started doing the GIA program, the Gemology Institute of America with Gwen, learning on how to do colored gemstones and pearls and diamonds, and whether it was lab grown or just grown in the field or whatever it was. And it was just so interesting. And then boom, the pandemic hits.
Right.
And I was only there for about 8 months. And we're quarantined. So I had been in touch with Gwen, just seeing if I'd still have the gig when I'd get back from quarantine. So that's when I'd said to my ex-wife, so we invested the money for Lincoln Land, and I had backed out of the program. My instructor, he was hard on us, and especially guys that
Sure.
just were kind of not the greatest. I remember that there was a lot of that 6 feet distance or whatever during that time, and not having to wear a mask, but just keeping the distance from people, and not having the rodeo. If you've ever heard of a rodeo, and I had to YouTube it, what is a rodeo? And they would have them in all the past years of that, but COVID wouldn't allow it to happen. But there was a lot of guys from across the country that would come to Lincoln Land, and they'd be climbing these poles like up and down like it was no other. And guys would tell me, Chad, it is just like climbing stairs. I was like, no, it's not. You have your gaffs on and trying to climb. And I just remember it was hilarious. All the criteria and the listing that showed like what you need to purchase for equipment.
And for all you guys out there, rodeo, you might have noticed this, but we're not talking about riding a bull here. We're talking about climbing a pole.
Climbing a pole.
Right.
So going then to where on the list of stuff to get equipment-wise, I had purchased Klein tools. Very good equipment. I had my primary belt on, my secondary belt on. And I remember a buddy of mine from high school, I was non-social in high school, going back to that too. I remember my dad would pick me up behind where like East Campus is there. And I remember, I think it was my freshman, sophomore year or whatever, before I had turned 16, Dad would pick me up by the mother houses behind the campus. Talk to any girls today? Nope. Next day, talk to any girls today? Nope. Same thing would go on. I never asked any girl to go to prom, homecoming. I still look back on that. And just never social all throughout my whole grade school, high school. I was always kind of teased throughout grade school, being called names and whatnot. Same thing in high school. But then I started dating my first girl from Rochester. She kind of broke me out of my shell, and that's when I got recruited for Abercrombie. And I just bloomed from there. I flourished. And so then getting hired on with Abercrombie and Fitch, and then Joseph Bank. And then I left the job from Joseph Bank to Gigani. Was there for about 7-8 months, and then lineman school. So talking about the rodeo and not talking about bull riding and everything, but climbing a pole. But one of the things in that list was pantyhose. And I said to my ex-wife, Victoria, I said, you might want to go buy the pantyhose. I'm not going to buy pantyhose and stuff at the store. And so they technically or typically will suggest for linemen to wear pantyhose under their jeans or khakis for the friction of the pole.
Okay, I was gonna say, why do you need to do that?
Yeah. So I don't know if you'd know Chase Martin, but his brother or his cousin Steve Hott is a lineman also, or was a lineman, journeyman lineman at the time. I think he also owns Illinois Gutters, if I'm pronouncing that right. So I just remember talking to Chase, and he goes, "Are you afraid of heights?" I'm like, "Not necessarily." He goes, "Dude, I tried like 20, 25 feet in the air." And he goes, "I was nervous." So I remember being there on the climbing pad out there, and it was a lot more agility type testing, not paperwork, but basically there was one on like an H structure, and it was about 60, 65, 70 feet in the air. And you're not really holstered up there, held by your primary belt, your secondary belt. So the secondary belt's a little looser, and it was kind of windy that day. I don't know if a storm was rolling in, but it was hot. I mean, it was July, August timeframe like it is now, and it was sweltering hot. And I remember wearing maybe a t-shirt, a long sleeve Carhartt pocket tee or something like that. But they said, highly recommend to wear another 1 or 2 t-shirts underneath, because even though it's hot out, the sweat will keep you cool.
Right.
And they suggested to not be drinking a lot of Gatorade or water, because you're going to get dehydrated after time, even though the Gatorade or the Powerade has electrolytes. So I would see guys out there drinking Pedialyte or something, and that chalky, thickness. I'm like,
Right.
I don't want to be guzzling down Pedialyte or Pediasure or whatever it was. And so I was guzzling Gatorades and water, but they're like, Chad, slow it down. And then there was another one. There was a test. Basically, it was like the dead man drop. And there were guys heavier set than me, and they would make this look like a piece of cake going up
Right.
and down the pole. Me being, I've put on some LBs, some weight since all this in the last year or so, but they would just make this look like a piece of cake going up and down. But there was a dead man drop. There's like a 350, 400-pound dummy. And basically, he's acting like he's dead or something. He's got shocked by the electricity, and you have to go and up and save him in a matter of time. Thank God for COVID. In the past, our instructors were telling us that in the past classes, they would have to, during this dead man drop, to put a raw egg in your mouth. Thank God we didn't have to do that
All
because
right.
of COVID. But some of these guys, from what the instructors had told us, is that they would profusely vomit because that raw egg would crack. I'm
Ooh,
like, oh no.
okay.
So I've never done a raw egg. I've got buddies that have tried that, and I give them credit for doing that, but I'm like, thank goodness. So I remember just my instructor. He was a lineman at one time in his life, or still an apprentice, but then his father was a lineman, his uncle was a lineman, his grandfather. So he's had that history. But he was hard on us, and especially me, with my learning disability. And so I remember backing out of the program. And I've told people this before, but I remember we would take a class picture. And I can't remember the number of guys that were in my program with me, but there was a lot. And they're like right out in front of this overhead like roof were like picnic tables where we would sit and have lunch or talk about what we were doing before the class started. And so the instructors wanted us every year, they would have the group of linemen take a picture. A lot of us would be up on the poles or down on the ground and holding a USA flag. We were given a lineman, IBEW lineman long sleeve t-shirt. I was like, oh, I love t-shirts. I love clothing. And as my buddies and my family know, that I have a lot of clothing in my wardrobe. So I'm like, oh, a free tee. But I remember our main instructor was like, if you back out of the program, we demand this back. So I didn't say anything to my ex-wife. She was at work. She works for the state. And so I went out one afternoon. I timed it right. It was lunch hour. A lot of guys would go down Toronto Road to Subway or McDonald's, whatever it may be. And so I timed it right to go out to my instructor and the other instructors that would stay there and have their lunch at the climbing pad. And I just went up and I said, I'm done. My instructor goes, Chad, I know I'm hard on you, but I know you can do this. And he was very nice at that time. What can we do to keep you? I said, and his name was Thad, but I said, I'm done. I've already checked out. And he goes, come on, man. And this other guy, Bob, and I can't think of the other guy's name, Steve, maybe, but he goes, what can we do? I said, I've already checked out. And so I said, here's your t-shirt. Keep it, Chad. You did your part and everything, and we applaud you for doing that. So I was thankful for that. I left. I go home. I'm standing in our garage at our house in Chatham, and I was on Facebook scrolling, and I see Dan Warren. If you know Dan, I think he's the general manager of Green Nissan, if you see those commercials. He was the new car manager at Honda. And so I contacted him. He was a couple years ahead of me at SHG. His sister Ashley was in my class. So he and I didn't know one another all that well, but we were friends. And I'm scrolling the news feed and I see that his post said, anybody interested in becoming part of the Honda Dream Team, contact me. So I messaged him. I didn't have his phone number. And he goes, hey, what's up, man? Long time no talk and everything. How's everything too? I said, I saw your post on Facebook about the Honda Dream Team. And so he goes, yeah, man, come on in. And so I had known Susan Langheim.
Yeah.
Susan and John. I grew up with Sean Langheim and Jacqueline and Heather, and Courtney was just a little baby at that time, but I know Bill Lynch and Emily and all that. So I went out there and met with them and got the job with Honda. So I would bounce back between Honda and Friendly Chevrolet. Now I think it's called Friendly Automotive, maybe. So I remember I was not very good at car sales either. I did, like going back to Abercrombie was kind of a piece of cake. It was basically helping people get a dressing room or ringing them up, stuff like that. But then Joseph Bank, learning disability, it took me a year, like I said, and got it down. Giganti, not knowing anything about jewelry. It was still a struggle, but I was only there 7-8 months, then the pandemic, then lineman. Car sales, not knowing anything about car sales. I had never worked a commission structure before. I love people. Like I said to you earlier, I love to build relationships. I love to just be with people on a personal level. So I would be out on the car lot there at Honda because that was my main area was my desk was there at Honda. But if somebody wanted to go over to Friendly Chevrolet, I would help them too. So here I'm standing out on the lot. I think it was winter time around that time too. It was cold. And here's a lot of car salesmen, a
Mhm.
lot of veteran car salesmen that have their clientele that would contact them. So here I'm a newbie. And I'm like, oh man. So I remember there was a customer that came through the lot, parked his car, was looking at pre owned cars. I'm like, okay, he seems pretty interested in this pre owned Honda Odyssey minivan. And so I recognized him as a teacher in theology or something at SHG. And we get to talking, and he goes, well, I don't want to test drive it right now. I'm still thinking about it, but I need to go home and talk it over with my wife.
Mhm.
And I said, okay. So I gave him my business card and I never answer unknown numbers. So he had already left the lot. He goes home. I get a call ringing. And again, like I said, I don't answer unknown numbers unless it leaves a voicemail. I'll call them back. I answer it though. And I said, hi, this is Chad. Chad, Milos Copeland. How are you doing? I said, I'm good, Milos. How are you? And he goes, I'm good, man. How's everything at Prairie Crossing? I said, oh, I didn't even know that you knew that I was over here. I don't know if I was friends with him at the time on Facebook. I might have
Uh-huh.
been, but I had posted on Facebook that I was working for Honda and Chevy. And so I said, it's okay, Milos. I'm still new to this. I've only been here, I don't know how many months I'd been there. It was not very long. He goes, well, why don't you come out here to West Wabash, Toyota, Volkswagen, Audi? And I can't remember if he said we're all in this together or not on the phone,
Oh, yeah.
but just knowing how he says that, and I love it. And so I did. I left Honda and I went over there to Toyota, and I had my desk there. But Walt Burnett, Burberry Burnett, he goes by because he loves his Burberry plaid.
Sure.
And he was a secondary finance man or secondary internet manager, maybe. So it was kind of a piece of cake too. It was already a done deal. He'd just give me the paperwork or whatever, call this customer or whatever, and just kind of show them the inside and the out, the exterior, interior of the car. Good. So then I remember leaving because again, it was just, I didn't like the whole commission deal, whatever. So I had applied for Springfield Clinic, not knowing what department, what area I was going to be in. But I worked briefly for Bun, the warehouse there on Stevenson.
Yeah.
It was during COVID, so it was mask mandated. Woo, was that warehouse hot as can be too.
Mhm.
And I was on the juice line for like Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's juicers, Dunkin' coffee. I don't know if I worked on Starbucks coffee machines or anything like that, but it was neat. Knowing Bob and Nancy Bun, Hi Bun, I didn't know all that well, but I would see Hi walk through on occasion. And my parents know him obviously, but he didn't know me all that well. Then I get a call at one given time for the clinic. I'm like, and it was for patient accounting over there off Stevenson in the Adloff location. And so I remember taking the job, and it was during all the Blue Cross Blue Shield nonsense going on, trying to keep patients in network. I've told so
Right.
many people about this, just telling them a little bit about my past history, like we're talking here. And again, I love face to face, like we're doing now. I want to basically know the emotions of people. It's hard for me to do it over the phone because I don't know how they're going to react and whatnot. And knowing how many patients were ticked off with Blue Cross and
Mhm.
with us and trying to keep them in network. So when I first got hired on there working in my cubicle, I was a part of the self-pay estimate team. And the gal that basically was ahead of that, I would do emails with maybe 5 or 6 other people, basically sending emails to the providers' offices, whether it was the receptionist or the nurse on point on stand. They would provide me with the CPT codes. Then I would relay that to Kelly, the head of our self-pay estimate team, and she would send that off to get them in network. But then every now and then I would have to be outbound calls, inbound calls, stuff like that. So again, I was there for about 2 years and I left.
Mhm.
And I remember my mom, I was talking to her and she goes, Chad, you need a job, this and that. At that time, I think mom and dad had retired. Like I said, mom was 38 and a half years with the phone company, dad 45. Chad, you need a job. So she takes me back in. Here I'm a 36, 7-year-old guy at this time. I'm like, I know I can do this on my own, but mom decides to take me back to Schnucks. She frequents Schnucks like no other.
Right.
Her there and Hy-Vee typically. Meyer on occasion. So we go into Schnucks and I get hired on as a stocker. And I was briefly there for a little bit. And Terry Wilson calls me up. And a lot of people know Terry from Joseph Bank and other places. He was at Back Rack back in the day in the
Mhm.
90s at the mall.
Sure, sure.
He was down here at the Union Station at the Hub clothing store. I don't know if he was at Myers Brothers, but he was at Roberts Brothers. So Terry calls me. I'm working at Schnucks. He was at Jim Heron. So after we closed Joseph Bank down in 2020 during the pandemic time, I was at Giganti and we were off on Sundays. We were closed. And so he called me up and he goes, "Hey, man, we're closing Joseph Bank." And I said, "What?" Todd and Cole have had that since 94 because their father, Farrell, we were talking about earlier with the Illinois Watch Company.
Right.
He dealt with Tom Lang Company here in Springfield too. I think they were the largest nationwide produce company, maybe if I'm not mistaken. So Farrell, gay, God rest his soul, he's been gone for a few years. Same with Ann. But Farrell had where Talbot's is in the Gables used to be Farrell's. And then at one given time at the other end, there was an opportunity for Todd and Cole to take over Joseph Bank.
Sure.
So they bought that out in 93, 94, opened in 94. Come 2020, we closed it because it was back and forth with Men's Warehouse. Men's Warehouse was going to buy Joseph Bank. Joseph Bank was going to buy Men's Warehouse out. Whoop. Men's Warehouse bought us. So Terry goes, "Hey, man, you're off on Sundays. You want to come over here and help the store?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I remember going in there on a Sunday or 2 or 3 times, and it was just not the same Joseph Bank. I remember all the shelves were empty, but they were having last minute closing out sales.
Mm-hmm.
So did that. I had said to Terry at one point, "Hey, you're working over at Jim Heron with Mark Meslowski. Would I be able to come over there?" He goes, "Let me talk with Maz and see." Well, at one given time, Maz, when he was still down here downtown at Jim Heron, he had contacted me. And I love Maz big time, but I didn't want to jeopardize a relationship, friendship that I've had with Todd and Cole since I was little.
Right.
And so being a competition, Joseph Bank and Jim Heron, I didn't want to ruin that. So then I'm like, "Hey, Terry, can you talk to Maz?" And so he did, but he goes, he just doesn't want to hire anybody on. When I'm back working my second time at Schnucks, he calls me up and he goes, "Hey, you want to come work for me, brother?" I said, "You're really considering doing this?"
Yeah.
He's wanted it all of his life, 40 some years in the clothing industry. So sure enough, I go over and do that with Terry. We opened November 1st of 2023. We had a soft opening before that, the end of October. And I was there for about 2 years and not even that. I can't remember. I left there latter part of last April of 2025, first part of May. And as we were discussing earlier, if I'm okay to talk about this, a lot of people do know this. I'm not embarrassed to say. I've told this to a lot of people at the Crafted Stag Supply where I'm at now, but I fell into a very, very severe drinking problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it was bad. I mean, I lost my marriage over it. I was dating a girl from Whitehall, just south of Jacksonville, Greene County. A year and a half, almost 2-year relationship, maybe. I can't remember. My ex-wife and I separated in 2022. We met in 2017, got married in 2018, had our first son together, and then had our second son a year later in 2019. So it's so cool to have my 2 boys being a year apart, being best of friends, and alcohol really jeopardized my life. And at times I really have gotten emotional over it, but thank God, thank him up above, just Jesus Christ, that he has saved me from the pits. And it just has been so rewarding to see how much he has done in my life and just everybody around me, with you and my closest friends and my family and so forth. Embarrassingly enough, but I've had 3 DUIs. The last one occurred 2 years ago, back in 2024, July 4th weekend. It was July 6th. Whew, it was a friends gathering. My friend Brett and his wife Joanna living out west past the YMCA out there. And I had my 2 boys and this and that. And my girlfriend came separately with our daughter. And so that was my first ever time going to jail. Didn't stop me from there, having 3 under my belt, to quit drinking until last May. My mom and dad had reached out to a family friend who's been in recovery for a long period of time and basically just said, "Chad needs some help. What can we do?" So he had called me last May 14th. I had just gotten off of work. Basically, every morning when I'd wake up, I'd have the worst shakes. And the only thing that would ever help it, not even beer, but it was bourbon, whiskey, stuff like that. And it would go from terrible shakes to just straight. So he had called me and said, "Hey, Chad, how's everything?" And I knew he could probably tell the slur in my voice. And I said, "It's gotten worse, Rex." And so he goes, "Let's call Gateway. You want to?" "No, I don't want to go away. Not inpatient, not outpatient at all." He goes, "Come on, Chad, this would be the best thing for you. Your mom, dad, I'd be proud of you. Your girlfriend, wife, maybe they'd be proud of you if you have, I'm sure, I think mom and dad told me you have kids." He goes, "Let's do it, Chad. I'm at home. You're at home. Let's call Gateway." And so I said, "Okay." It's just that fear of the unknown, going off to a place that I don't know anything and surrounded by other And no offense to them, drug addicts or alcoholics and stuff. I applaud each and every one of them. It was shortly after the Crafted Stag opened in April of 2024. So it would have been April, May, June, sometime around that summer. And so Parker and I had Parker with me, just my youngest son. And so I said, Parker, you want to go get a haircut? I had started drinking that morning. Embarrassingly enough, I would drink and drive. And I'm so sorry to all of you that I would do that, putting people in harm's danger, my child in harm's danger. But I said, Parker, you want to go get a haircut? And he goes, yeah. So I take him to Sport Clips. We get him a haircut, fresh new do. And I said, Parker, I need some coffee. Do you want to go get go vanilla bean frappuccino? And he goes, yeah. So I get him a tall, and I said, Parker, let's go get you a toy at Target. Okay, Dad. He's into Minecraft and Roblox, and I think at that time he might have been into Blippi. I'm an excavator, that kind of jingle and everything. And so my two boys, Jackson Parker, they loved Blippi, Coco Melon, Pink Fong, all that good stuff on YouTube. And so we go to Target. I'm parked out in Timbuktu right there where the Target pickup orders you place are. And so I'm near the Crafted Stag. And I said, Parker, my gosh, I forgot there's a new clothing store that just opened up. You want to go check it out? So he goes, yeah, Dad. So we go across the street and park and everything. And I didn't realize it was a Monday. And we're closed on Mondays at the Crafted Stag. That's Grant and Jenny's way of just giving us Mondays off, I guess, and Tuesday through Friday and the weekend. So I'm just not coherent enough, I guess, that I park. I don't see any other cars in the parking lot. I can't remember if Jenny's car was up front or if it was in the back of the store. But I get Parker out of his car seat. I walk hand in hand with him and I nudge on the door. And I'm like, oh, shoot. I look at the hours of operation on the door and I see Monday closed. And I said, Parker, they're closed. And he goes, man. So we walk hand in hand back to the car. I'm about to get him in the car to get him in his car seat. And all of a sudden I hear Jenny. I'd never met Jenny. I don't know if I'd ever met Grant and Jenny. I knew Jordan, Grant's brother, on occasion, and maybe Max, their father, from Joseph Bank. But Jenny opens up the door and she goes, you guys can come on in. So never seeing the store, I'm like, wow, this is quite the place. This is so cool. A bar, a barber shop, everything.
Heck yeah.
And so here's all these cool brands from Vineyard Vines to Patagonia, my kind of clothing store. And at one given time, I was telling you earlier, there's 3 barbers. So they were all off. It was a Monday closed, but Jenny was in there doing paperwork or something with the store. And so she goes, you guys can shop around. When Grant and Jenny opened up the store in April of 2024, they had a little kids section off to the right where now our walk-in barbers are. And so it was kind of neat. I believe we looked at that. They had anywhere from Fieldstone. I think they had Burley Bow for kids. It was just cool. So I walked around, did a little shopping. Not that I need any more clothes, because everywhere from Abercrombie clothing to Joseph Bank clothing to whatever I got from Giganti Jewelers, I got some cool stuff from there. I never got a Rolex because I couldn't afford the Rolex. I would love one someday, but I just couldn't afford it.
There you go. We'll put the Target out there.
Absolutely.
You can get one.
Anybody want to give me a
There
Submariner
you
or
go.
something? Got Master, anything. I'll take a Sea Dweller, anything, even a Date Just. And so we left. It was so nice. We thanked Jenny for letting us come in. And then I remember calling her on occasion when I was drunk. I was calling in anybody left and right. I'd call my buddy Blake Krager, who's been in recovery, to these other girls I had the hots for and stuff. Just alcohol gave me more confidence for some reason. And people, like I was saying earlier, they're like, Chad, oh my God, you don't need confidence with alcohol. You already have enough confidence in you that you can talk to a brick wall.
Yeah.
You can talk to a tree stump, whatever it may be. And so I just have that gift of gab thanks to my mom, thanks to my father, thanks to my sister. And so then that's when Jenny, I'm in Gateway, Jacksonville, and it was last August. And that's when I'm heading to lunch with my buddy Joey. And I'm like, hold on, Joey, just a second. Jenny Hammer's calling me on the phone. I'm like, out of the blue. And she goes, hi, Chad, how's everything? And I said, good. I'm doing very well, Jenny, to be honest, but I'm in Gateway. And she goes, Chad, I'm so proud of you for doing what you need to do with your addiction and getting everything wrapped up. How's everything going? I said, oh, Jenny, I'm so good right now. So this would have been August. I checked in May, so a couple months sober. And she goes, Chad, I applaud you. And she goes, when do you get out? And I said September 8th. And she goes, what's your plan when you get back to Springfield? Are you going to work for Terry, or go back and work for Terry at Wilson Haberdashery?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, Jenny, just a lot. And she goes, well, we're looking to hire somebody on here. And what about you come in on a Monday when you get out? And so I met with her maybe that week of or the next week with her and Grant. I just met with them. And I think I got to meet one other guy. I can't remember who it was that was there on just kind of in the shop helping. And so they hired me on. I started September 20th, and during all that, they said, you're new in recovery. Just to inform you, you can see this bar sitting right here, that we do serve alcohol. And I said, that is not a problem. I go to outpatient. At that point, it was 2 times a week. So I was going Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I think I had my counselor. I was getting what's called the Vivitrol shot. So for drug addicts that are in recovery, they're getting Sublocade, I believe. But for alcoholics, they would do the Vivitrol shot. And it's a pretty lengthy needle. They inject in your ass and whatnot. And so it just shuts off the endorphins. It cuts out the cravings for alcohol or Sublocade with drugs. And boy, has that truly, truly helped me not to have one desire to pick up a drink.
Wow.
And my buddies are like, oh my gosh, Chad, we will not even drink around you. I'm like, you're fine. It does not trigger me one bit. I've got people that are in the store walking around with an old fashioned or a glass of bourbon or a beer or a glass of wine, whatever it may be. And so I'm like, guys, you're fine, but they don't want to do it. Just they want to be good with me and just drink iced tea or Pepsi or Gatorade water,
Right.
whatever it may be. And so I remember that week of whatever day that fell on that week when I started September 20th, it might have been the following week that Grant just goes, I want to inform you, we have a great relationship with the Brick House, with Will Hoaker, Tory Points. We're hosting a bourbon tasting. And I'm like, that's not a problem. So Tory Points and Will get there and they start pouring out E.H. Taylor bourbon. Grant pulls me to the back room and he goes, you doing okay with this? And I said, of course. Doesn't tempt me one bit. He goes, okay, I just wanted to double check.
Mhm.
So I still have past clientele customers from other retail places. How do you do this around a bar? And I'll tell them. And so going on a year and almost 2 months sober tomorrow.
Congratulations on that,
Thank you,
man. That's awesome.
It has been so good, man. It's been a blessing. And I tell people this, I'm not embarrassed to say it to people at the store. And when I tell people about this, they will actually tell me that they've had a struggle with alcohol too. But as they told me in Gateway, is that you yourself as an individual have to want it yourself. So through all of this, I'll get on another level.
Yeah.
But as a lot of you guys know, with Little Hayes Johnson, there's a lot of people that still don't know about it, but I've got a cross on the back of my back window on my vehicle that has the cross, Pray for Hayes. And I'm wearing this cool little Pray for Hayes wristband here. I've got multiples at home. I'm wearing even Infinity cross bracelets from RyanandRose.com. They're based out of Nashville. And this gal, I guess her daughter might be Ryan or something, and maybe the other daughter's Rose. I can't remember, but they do little pacifiers and stuff for babies, but then they also do these rubber bracelets with a cross on it. The Infinity Jesus Christ cross bracelet. Sorry, tongue twister there. And just wearing a lot of this cool stuff. And so this Pray for Hayes, I was just there at the Westside Market Sunday when I saw you and your daughter. I went inside, and that's when I see Nicole Horner, and she's there in that little party room, and she's got the table with the bracelets, the yard signs, stickers that say Pray for Hayes, even red and little light blue ribbon that Joe and Aubrey chose as the colors, red and blue for Hayes. I only knew of Joe and Aubrey from a distance. I didn't know them personally. I knew them just mutual friends. I'd see them at Westside Church on occasion and stuff, sitting across from me when I got back from treatment in September. Wow, do I feel like I know them very well now. And so when I found all of this out, my buddy Jay Behrens had reached out to me a couple months ago and talking about joining Wise Guys men's Bible study on Wednesdays from 6 to 7:30. And I had been talking with John Minnick about a year and a half ago, but I was in my active addiction and I chose alcohol over trying to go to the church and meet with all these guys for Bible study. I grew up, like I said, in the Catholic Church. I believe in God and I know that he's my higher power, but I kind of just fell out of touch with God. And when I drank, I don't know if I told you this before, but the devil had a grasp on me like no other. So back to Joe and Aubrey, Pray for Hayes. When I work on Sundays with Misha's awesome. I think you might have met her before. She does a lot of bartending events. So I was telling her that I was on Dan Beasley's website. Dan and I got to meet briefly last year during the whole Chatham Why Not incident that occurred. I went out there, Tyler Scanlon with State Farm Agency. He and I used to grow up together as buddies at Illini Country Club. I found on his Facebook page or his State Farm Agency page that him and Corey Cates with the bank in Chatham, they were doing the red ribbon decals, Chatham Strong. And I said, Tyler, by any chance, can I come out to your office and grab some of these? He goes, yes. So I went out there, grabbed some of those, and I just wanted to drive by Why Not, pay my respects at the little 5 memorials for those children. And I see this gentleman standing in the pouring down rain with a little raincoat hood on. And I said, hi, I'm Chad Slayton. He goes, nice to meet you. I'm Dan Beasley. A couple weeks ago, a month ago, however long it's been, we had a prayer vigil downtown, just catty corner right across on 9th Street from St. John's. We would look up and see where Joe and Aubrey's room was for Hayes. And I don't know they had a little graphic tent on the window, but we'd wave up to him. Joe was standing right in front of me. And now, again, I didn't know Joe and Aubrey all that well. I have a pretty decent relationship with them, praying for Hayes every single day. And so here's this prayer vigil. There's about 150, 175, 200 plus down there. There's West Side with Eric Goodman and Laura Crater. They're singing music. And then one gal got up and read a piece of printer paper front and back for a prayer. There's a gal that used to part own, Angela Holland, I think is her name, part owned with Aubrey at Velvet and Rosemary over here in Willow and Birch's hair salon. And then Dan Beasley got on the mic and spoke for a little bit and said a prayer. And then, as I was telling you about Misha at the Crafted Stag, she and I work Sundays, and I said, Misha, Dan Beasley's got this website called themessageofthecross.net, and it kind of gives you a little history stories of where he's been across the country with his cross. And I said, there's this little girl from Chatham. She's got to be 9, 10, 11 years old, whatever she is. She goes, Chad, her name's Jillian Hummel, and I know the Hummels very well. Emily and John, the parents, the two brothers that are very good baseball players. And I said, you do? You know Jillian? And so Misha runs an in-home daycare in Chatham out of her house. She just part-time works once a week, I think, at the Crafted Stag. And she goes, Chad, I used to watch Jillian when she was 6 weeks old. I'm like, oh, God. I said, I just ordered a cross, a 250 cross, but here is so neat. This little 250 cross right here that Jillian paints. And originally these were coming out of Jerusalem. On the back, it says One Nation Under God. And so I ordered one of these off of the Message of the Cross website that Dan has. Dan personally gave this to me at the prayer vigil, but then he goes, Chad, because I went up to him briefly and I said, Dan, I don't know if you remember me, but he's holding the cross. And he goes, Chad, I see so many people throughout the country. I'm sorry, I don't remember you. Little by little. So after the prayer vigil got over, everybody starts dispersing, leaving and stuff, the parking lot. But then there's people gathered around a little circle talking. And I see what appears to look like Jillian. And she's got a little Ziploc bag full of crosses. And I'm like, this has to be Jillian. So I bent over and I said, are you Jillian? And she goes, uh-huh. And I said, I know I don't know you. You don't know me, but you know Misha, don't you? And she goes, mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I said, I work with her at the Crafted Stag. And she darts, and I tell this to a lot of people, she looks at her mom. I didn't realize mom was standing right there behind me. Chad? And I said, yes. And she goes, my God, long story, but Misha's told me all about you. I want to congratulate you on your recovery. I am so proud of you. And now knowing that you and I and Jillian, we have a relationship now, a friendship. So then Dan comes up to me and he goes, Chad, Slayton, right? And I said, yes. How do you remember this? And he goes, I just sent your 250 cross out to you yesterday. I thought they were coming from Chatham, Piper Glen, where the Hummels live, but he was shipping them from Detroit, Michigan. So he saw Aubrey's post on Facebook. I'm friends with him on Facebook. Aubrey's friends with him on Facebook. A lot of friends that I'm mutual friends in common with on Facebook are friends with him. He sees Aubrey's post about Hayes. He jumped in his truck and drove 8 hours from Detroit, Michigan. So it was just so cool. I went down. I was there for the 3:30 vigil, and out of all those people, Dan would come up to me like 3, 4, 5 times saying, Chad, can you hold the cross for me while I go back to the truck and gather some more crosses?
Wow.
So then Emily Hummel goes, Chad, can I get a picture of you and Jillian holding the cross? Because Jillian's got Hope Across the Nation with Jillian. If any of you go on Facebook, Hope Across the Nation with Jillian, it'll give you her story as well. So it is just so cool. I've grown such a relationship with Dan, with Jillian, with Emily. Long story, but that same night we had a 9 o'clock vigil downtown as well. And there weren't as many people. There was probably 20, 30, 40 of us. Everybody left that evening. Chris Mannion, myself, Darren Fritz, Dan Beasley. We didn't leave there until about quarter till midnight, 12:15 that next morning. We're standing in the dark. Security of St. John's would drive through. Is everybody okay here? He goes, we see the cross in the truck. So we helped load Dan's cross into the truck. He was telling us stories that he's dealt with across the country. It was so cool. And so all 4 of us have our hand on that cross. We're just leaning up against Dan's truck. And I mentioned something about baptism. And I talked about being sprinkled as a baby into the Catholic Church. Darren goes, Chad, I'm sure your parents have told you this. I'm sure other people have told you that you don't need to get rebaptized into the Catholic Church, but you do. You're innocent as a baby, but as later in life, you give your life to Christ. And I said, I've always talked about this. I grew up in the Catholic Church, going to Blessed Sacrament, still do on occasion. occasion, but not as often. And then I went to Hope Church with my ex-wife and our children. They still go there. My ex-wife is a singer, a lead singer on the worship team and this and that. I love Brian and Chantel Mills and Troy Easley and Curtis Batchelder and Garrett and all of them. But I love now getting to know Eddie Lowen. And when my girlfriend told me when we first met back in 2023, she goes, Chad, I went to St. Agnes Grade School, SHG, but I go to Westside. I'm like, I would love to meet Eddie Lowen. And so I have a great relationship as you do with Eddie Lowen and everybody there. Chip Ewald, that night downtown at that vigil, the four of us, Dan, Darren, myself, and Chris, all hands on the cross. And Darren goes, Chad, I insist I beg of you, do not wait, do not hesitate or anything. If you can get baptized tomorrow, do it. So that next morning, I knew that Joe and Aubrey and the Johnson family were going to make their way to Westside. Somebody was going to stay up in the hospital room with Hayes. And sure enough, that was when we went to church that next morning. Chris and I had prayer group that morning and we went to Papo's, had coffee, and Chris is looking at his watch and he goes, Chad, it's 8:30. We might want to go over to the church right now. 9:30 is the service. We need to see if we can get you baptized. And normally Westside, and I'm sure other Christian churches and stuff have a process to go through, a phone interview, all this stuff. We go up to the table there in the concourse of Westside where they do Rooted and all this stuff. And Chris goes, Kayla, this young man, Chad, wants to get baptized today. Can we do something to get him baptized? Dan Beasley's here for church. He's going to drive back to Detroit. He's got his cross in the truck right now. The Johnson family's here, Joe and Aubrey, all this and that. We know it's going to be a busier service than typically the 9:30 service is busy. He wants to get baptized now. I said, is Chip Ewald here by chance? He normally does baptisms. No, Chad, he's unfortunately out of town on vacation. I said, okay. Matt then comes walking up. Matt, this young man wants to get baptized today. What can we do? He goes, oh my gosh, I'm here to host Joe and Aubrey and take care of them. Little did I know, long story short, boom, I was able to get baptized that morning of. I was the only one to get baptized on that Sunday. There was a young man that got baptized that Saturday, the day before. Woo, was that so cool, and just seeing so many people come up. But again, I am on the Pray for Hayes board now with Jason Dolby with the group insurance in Chatham, Jeff Stauffer that helped put together the Chatham Strong Fest last summer. He used to own Mid-America Billboards, and now he's got bus gates. Amy Fullerton, Celeste Malum with Fed Kitchen, to Darren Fritz, to Riley Craig, and Joe Johnson, his brother Andrew, Hayes' uncle Andrew Johnson. So we are on this board come August 8th at Spartan Park in Chatham. We'll have our Pray for Hayes Fest. So we hope that all of you will be out there, and we will have all kinds of vendors, kind of like the West Side Market. Yeah. We will have a home run derby. We will have a fund a need. I guess we are having a foam thing for kids. We'll have all kinds of things. So we're going to have new t-shirts made. We'll have probably new wristbands made. There's a company, these two awesome gals from Athens, Justice Graphics. It's just been so rewarding seeing what HSHS has done with the donation for Pray for Hayes. And all these proceeds are going to Joe and Aubrey. They're up in Chicago at Shirley Ryan. What a great facility. That's where Charlie Spurlock went from Mount Zion when he got involved in that snowmobile accident a couple years ago. Just an absolute blessing. So
powerful stuff, Chad.
Powerful stuff.
One last quick one for you. Is there anything we can all do to help elevate Springfield and the surrounding communities?
To elevate Springfield and all the surrounding communities, anything non-for-profit. Going back to when I was in recovery and getting one of the DUIs, I had to get involved with DUI evaluation treatment services here in Springfield. And it was all a non-for-profit thing that I had to basically complete 100 hours of community service. So anywhere from Habitat for Humanity, but also like Big Brother, Big Sister, Boys and Girls Club, stuff like that. We, like I said, as everybody does, they want to support local. I love to see everybody in the community, not just the big box stores like Shields and Best Buy and Target and all these places, but I love Shields too, and they've done a great way of donating to a lot of places as well.
Right.
I look forward to seeing them succeed with the Shields Sports Park too, and all the businesses coming out that way. Cannot wait to see that. But anything to help elevate Springfield is just the non-for-profit stuff. Help the community out. Come shop local. Come to the Crafted Stag Supplier, Papo's Cafe, or any of the boutiques from Shayna Gibbons to there's the Beige Bee Boutique with Brittany Dura and her husband TJ to as you and I saw each other on Sunday at the West Side Market, getting to know Rachel Rodriguez with Inspira, Hayes, to Custom Cup Coffee down here with Kendra and Brent Bastafer, to Pizzas at Bun Gourmet, On the Go Boutique, Better with Bubbly. God, there's so many women's boutiques more than men's.
Yeah, definitely.
Go shop at Terry Wilson Store, Wilson Haberdashery, to Jim Heron with Mark Meslowski, to Grant and Jenny Hammer with the Crafted Stag Supply, anything. And just an absolute pleasure here with Robert Farrell here this morning. I can't thank you enough for letting me be a part of this morning. I know I'm personally not a local business owner myself.
All right, well, Chad, appreciate you stopping by and telling your powerful story today.
Thank you so much, Robert.
Today. Appreciate
It's
it, brother.
An absolute pleasure.
Yeah. Well, we're going to let Chad get back to elevating Springfield.
But for the rest of y'all, we'll be right back.
Looking for expert tree care with hometown integrity? Look no further than Sangamon Tree Service. They're your trusted local pros, delivering quality workmanship, exceptional customer service, and fair, honest pricing every time. Whether it's trimming, removal, or storm cleanup, their team brings professionalism and care to every job, big or small. Call the name your neighbors trust, Sangamon Tree Service, or visit them today at sangamontreeservice.com. Sangamon Tree Service, rooted in quality, built on trust. Looking for personalized insurance with hometown care? David Hilst American Family Insurance Agents here to help you protect what matters most: your family, your home, and your dreams. Whether it's auto, home, life, business, David and his team are proud to serve the Springfield community with trusted advice and reliable coverage. Local service, real relationships, peace of mind. Call today or stop by their office. They can build your dream protection plan together. Call 217-726-6343.
Well, thank you for joining us today, everybody. Appreciate you making us a part of your day. Hey, don't forget, while you're out on social, check ours out. You can check my personal one out at Robert Farrell at everywhere. Check out those Elevate Springfield pages, those Big Dog Business Coaching pages as well. Check us out over on YouTube. Give us a subscribe, give us a like or a follow on any of those channels. We would certainly appreciate it. So hey, take what you learned today. You bring the discipline and follow through, and together, that's right, y'all, we're going to elevate Springfield. Be great.
When I first walked into Shudokan Karate Club, I was just looking for a way to get stronger, but what I found was so much more. Here we train in traditional karate, the real stuff, passed down through generations. Every punch, every kata has purpose. I've learned self-discipline, confidence, and how to protect myself. Not just in class, but in real life. It's not about being aggressive, it's about being prepared. This is more than a club, it's a way of life. Join us at Shudokan, traditional, powerful, real. Ki-ai!